Another video, and it looked like Caitlin Clark has landed a huge win against the WNBA and possibly her treatment.
Kathy Angelberg likely never expected this outcome. The WNBA's usual calm front just completely backfired. Caitlin Clark didn't only secure victory on the court, she may have claimed one off it as well. The same league that tried to downplay that incident now faces the backlash. Seems like karma's working extra hours. Who do you think managed this chaos more poorly, the league or the players? Share your thoughts below, because this situation is a true example of failed damage control.
I feel as if Kane and their company hasn't been standing up for Caitlin when it comes to her getting off the ball, when it comes to referees, when it comes to the disrespect from players and the league, and the way Kathy sneaked this in, and all these said things that is steady happening.
Let's be real. If ignoring reality were an Olympic sport, Kathy Angelberg and the WNBA would have taken home gold. When Caitlin Clark was shoved, actually body-checked like she was playing defense in football, the league treated it like just another day. The referees stayed quiet, the commentators acted clueless about replays, and the WNBA's official page said nothing. Absolutely nothing. You could almost hear the PR team whispering, "If we stay quiet, maybe this will fade away." But people didn't forget. Fans filled social media with outrage. ESPN hosts had to bring it up. Even casual viewers were wondering, why isn't anyone talking about this? When a rookie who's raised your TV ratings by 300% gets hit on national television, you can't just act like nothing happened. But Kathy Engelbert did exactly that, and she stood by it. For weeks, the WNBA closed ranks. Players labeled fans as haters. Reporters were blocked from locker rooms for simply asking questions. And Caitlin? She stayed calm. No online outbursts. No dramatic statements. She just kept playing, scoring, and acting like the silence didn't affect her. That's what unsettled the league. Because silence carries weight when you're winning, and Caitlin never stopped. Every game, every interview, every stat made her the headline the WNBA could no longer control. The same media that once ignored her fan base now couldn't get enough of her.
I had to talk about a story that's very, very important. And albeit indirectly, it involves Caitlin Clark, the Department of Justice, and quite possibly the President of the United States himself. Somebody got to say it, so I'm going to say it. But the one thing I will not do is take credit for this. I am looking at the Wall Street Journal.
Then came the turning point. Reports surfaced that Clark and her team had quietly consulted legal experts after the incident video resurfaced online, this time reaching millions of views, with analysts openly calling it assault. The moment that word entered the discussion, assault, everything changed. It stopped being a simple sports debate and became a workplace safety issue, a full-blown PR crisis sitting on a legal fuse. And Kathy Engelbert, usually composed and polished, began to feel the pressure. Sponsors, the ones funding the league, wanted explanations. They hadn't invested millions to be associated with highlight reels of chaos. That's when an official review suddenly appeared, conveniently after weeks of silence. The WNBA announced that appropriate action had been taken and that sportsmanship remained a priority, which basically translated to, "We're not doing anything, but please stop talking about it." But fans didn't drop it. Reporters kept digging. And Clark's camp? They stood firm. Behind the scenes, her team started demanding accountability, assurances that she'd be protected from excessive physical play and that the league would actually enforce its own rules. Sounds like common sense, right? Yet, that's exactly when Engelbert's PR image began to crack. Sponsors started sending letters of concern. Networks began raising questions about safety clauses in their deals. Suddenly, the WNBA was backed into a corner. Either admit they'd ignored a serious issue or pretend they'd been proactive from the start. Guess which route they chose? Right, the "we've been on top of this since day one" story. Except this time, Caitlin had something far more powerful than a press statement. She had the fans, the spotlight, and the leverage that comes with being the league's biggest draw.
And marketable. Instead of protecting its transformative star, the league's leadership ignores the relentless targeting of Ms. Clark, treating its greatest asset as if she were a PR headache. That approach could turn into
Every arena she stepped into, fans echoed her name. Opponents were booed the moment they played rough. Clips exploded online, and the same media once hesitant to question favoritism began to shift the narrative. Why is the league defending aggressors instead of protecting its stars? Why does it take public outrage for Engelbert to respond? Then came the headline that broke the internet. Caitlin Clark wins league review. WNBA tightens player conduct rules after backlash. The victory wasn't about apologies or suspensions. It was about making the WNBA acknowledge that Clark had been right all along. For months, they'd treated her like a PR inconvenience. Now, because of her, they were rewriting their own rulebook. And Engelbert? She had to stand at the podium and pretend it was all part of the league's ongoing commitment to fairness. Translation: we made a mistake, and we're fixing it before it turns into a lawsuit. It's almost poetic. The same commissioner who tried to minimize the Caitlin Clark phenomenon ended up being outshined by it. Let's be honest, if Caitlin weren't Caitlin, none of this would have happened. If it were a mid-level rookie, the story would have disappeared in a day. But Clark brought in too much money, too much visibility, and too many fans for the WNBA to hide behind silence. And Engelbert knows it. That's why she's now overcompensating in interviews, calling Caitlin a transformative player and a key part of the league's growth. Because nothing says vital quite like pretending to support the person you once tried to ignore until the lawyers got involved. But here's where things got even more uncomfortable. The controversy didn't just divide fans. It created tension among players too. Some of Clark's teammates began quietly standing up for her in post-game interviews, admitting the criticism's gone too far. Others kept insisting the media hype was to blame for all the friction. You could sense the change. Locker rooms were no longer unified under the anti-hype attitude. Clark's calm professionalism began winning people over. She didn't stir up drama. She didn't respond with attitude. She just kept showing up and outperforming the noise. That's when Engelbert realized Caitlin's silence carried more weight than the league's entire PR team. And here's where the tables really turned. The WNBA thought the issue would disappear after a few headlines, a generic press release, and a handful of "we support all players" quotes. But instead, it became a harsh reality check for Kathy Engelbert's leadership. Suddenly, the same media outlets that once ran stories like "Caitlin Clark needs to toughen up" were now asking, has the WNBA failed to protect its biggest star? That's what happens when you try to gaslight an entire fan base. Eventually, the truth takes over. It worked for a week, maybe two. But once the evidence piled up, there was no spinning the story anymore. And for Engelbert, the proof was everywhere. Game clips replayed across every sports network. Podcasts dissected her leadership. Even former NBA stars, who rarely comment on WNBA issues, began weighing in. Analysts like Charles Barkley and Stephen A. Smith didn't hold back. They weren't defending Caitlin because she was a rookie. They spoke up because the double standard was undeniable. If someone had shoved LeBron James like that, it would have led to fines, suspensions, and wall-to-wall coverage for days. But for Caitlin, the league barely acknowledged it. And the more she kept winning, the worse Engelbert looked. Nothing exposes weak leadership faster than a player thriving despite it. Clark's silence made her appear composed, mature, and unstoppable, while the league seemed like a disorganized mess scrambling after every game. By the time the WNBA finally rolled out their updated code of conduct, it didn't matter. Fans had already made up their minds. Caitlin Clark was assaulted. The league ignored it, and only acted once the backlash started costing money. That wasn't progress. It was damage control. And speaking of money, the sponsors noticed. Nike, Gatorade, and Wilson, all brands linked to the league through major endorsement deals, began watching closely how their logos were being tied to the growing controversy. None of them wanted to appear aligned with a league that couldn't protect its own stars. That's when the real pressure started building behind the scenes. In modern sports, sponsors hold more influence than commissioners. When advertisers start hinting at pulling campaigns or rethinking partnerships, decisions get made fast. So when Engelbert finally appeared in a joint press release praising Clark's professionalism and reaffirming the league's commitment to player safety, everyone knew it wasn't about ethics. It was about economics. Still, Clark handled it with remarkable grace. In her most recent interview, she laughed about how she used to get nervous before games, saying she now feels like she's exactly where she's meant to be. You could tell she wasn't just talking about basketball, she was talking about control. She finally had it. And in an ironic twist, Engelbert had unintentionally helped her reach that point. Because every time the league tried to downplay her story, it only made Caitlin Clark more powerful and even more impossible to ignore. Every missed foul and every awkward press conference ended up fueling the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. Each ignored moment only brought her more sympathy, more supporters, and more momentum for her brand. Even rival players began shifting their tone. The same ones who once mocked her college fan base now talk about respecting her evolution. The ones who claimed she wasn't ready for the league have gone quiet because numbers don't lie. Attendance, viewership, and jersey sales are all skyrocketing. And the person driving that success? The very player they once tried to downplay. The irony couldn't be clearer. But let's not pretend Engelbert suddenly figured it all out. The WNBA still faces a major issue. It's run more like a PR campaign than a professional sports league. Every decision seems filtered through image management. You can see it in how stories are framed. When Clark wins, it's credited to team effort, but when she loses, it's labeled a rookie reality check. That bias didn't begin this season. She just exposed it. And she did it effortlessly. Now, fans are demanding transparency. They want fair officiating, stronger player protection, and real consistency in discipline, basically, the bare minimum for a league that calls itself professional. And for Engelbert, that demand signals something she's long avoided: accountability. Because once you start admitting mistakes, people stop judging your intentions and start judging your results. Her record hasn't exactly inspired confidence. Teams folding, players voicing frustration over pay, and now this controversy exposing how poorly the league's leadership handles pressure. But Caitlin Clark changed the game, literally and figuratively. She brought in a new generation of fans who don't care about old rivalries or league politics. They care about fairness, the sport itself, and they're unafraid to call out hypocrisy when they see it. That's what truly worries the WNBA. This new audience can't be swayed by PR spin. They watched the incident, noticed the silence, and then witnessed Caitlin dominate both on and off the court. It's almost poetic that her calm composure became her most powerful weapon. While Engelbert scrambled to manage the fallout, Caitlin simply kept doing what she does best: winning. Every interview now feels like a reminder that she's the real face of the league, whether Engelbert accepts it or not. Clark talks about prayer, gratitude, and staying grounded, things no press release can fake. That authenticity makes her unstoppable because you can't outspin what's real. And Engelbert knows it now. She can't control Caitlin Clark. She can only try to keep pace. So when people say Clark won, they're not just referring to a policy change or a public review. They're talking about a complete power shift. For the first time in years, the fans, not the commissioner, are shaping the league's direction. Engelbert never saw that coming. She thought Clark was another rising star, not a turning point in WNBA history. Now, every player who steps on the court does so in a league Caitlin Clark forced to evolve. One that finally has to care about fairness, visibility, and accountability. You can almost picture Engelbert replaying that press conference, wondering how control slipped away. How the league she once managed became defined by a 23-year-old with a jump shot and a calm sense of purpose. Well, Kathy, it slipped away the moment you underestimated the fans, because you can't silence the people who pay the bills, and you can't bury a story when the internet's watching. Caitlin didn't need outrage, lawsuits, or social media rants. She just kept playing. And that quiet strength exposed the league's flaws more effectively than any press headline ever could. So yes, calling it instant regret might be putting it mildly. Engelbert didn't just misjudge Caitlin Clark. She misjudged how passionate, informed, and loyal fans have become. Now, every polished statement, every league values fairness slogan sounds hollow next to Caitlin's calm words. I'm happy with where I am. I've worked for this life. That isn't just confidence, it's control. The kind the WNBA commissioner may never regain. So what do you think? Has Kathy Engelbert finally learned she can't silence the fans? Or will the league try another PR act next season? Share your thoughts below, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button and subscribe, because the WNBA story is far from over.